from your student. So when you learn from your student, that is the happiest day. And today I am extremely happy to be chairing and moderating this particular session. This is a very important topic today, what she is going to talk to us. If 30 years back, if you would have asked me, what is the most important cause of the fatty liver and fatty liver disease, possibly everybody would answer that the most important cause would be kwashiorkor. But today we know that kwashiorkor almost does not exist. And today we are having different types of diseases, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is the major cause of fatty liver in children. He is going to address, I am sure, different issues on the fatty liver in children. What is new? Specifically, the diagnostic tests have become newer, and possibly in future, you will forget about liver biopsy. Possibly in future, you will have many more therapeutics which would be available. And in the diagnostic field also, you will be knowing to get so many genomic as well as molecular and genetic diagnostic which are going to come. I'm sure she is going to elaborate each and every aspect of this cases of fatty liver, when to suspect, whom to suspect, what needs to be done, how early diagnosis can be done, how prevention should be done. And today, fatty liver in children is one of the most important cause, and possibly it is the single most important cause of liver transplantation in women in many countries of the world, especially in developed countries of the world, and possibly the second most important cause of liver transplantation in males after alcoholic liver cirrhosis. So it can really devastate a child's life from just fatty liver to liver fibrosis to liver cirrhosis. And even without cirrhosis, it has been observed that it can lead to even liver cancer. So all those are increasing in number over a period of time. I don't want to just waste time right now. I would like to really express my gratitude to Dr. Sandhya Gupta as well as Dr. Bimal Kumar for inviting me for this inaugural CME of South Delhi Pediatric branch. Thank you very much. And over to Nilam now.
Good evening, everybody. A very, very happy new year. I'm really enthralled by Sandhya Madam and Bimalji for giving this opportunity to me for the first opening, being the batsman, I can say, for the first opening batsman. Let me see how to make it as a single person. I'm not sure that I should. Okay, I will hide everybody else, including me. So this is a very interesting topic. Am I audible, please?
Yes, you are audible.
Right. I would like to thank Dr. Datta for this opportunity, and I'm so grateful to him. Every time I meet him, I express my gratitude. So true. While I was a student, he's right, for 3 years, 92 to 95, I used to be visiting MC, and he would give me the opportunity to present the case. And I'm very grateful for all that you did to mentor me in my life. Thank you very much for that. And I start this topic, which is very interesting, an approach to fatty liver in children. So I would like to start with like this case, a 14 years old boy comes to me with pain abdomen for 2 weeks, with vomiting on and off for a week. There was no history of any loose stools, constipation, jaundice, abdominal distension, fever, rash, bleeding, etc., etc. And nothing great, significant past history, except that he's been taking some medicines for this. His weight, his BMI was little on the overweight, as you can see the chart I have drawn. And the vitals was normal, nothing great in the general examination, except that he was overweight and his liver was 4 centimeters below the right costal margin with a span of 13.5. Spleen was not palpable. And there were some investigations which he was carrying in the OPD in the last 2 months. And here you can see that earlier his SGOT was 194, his SGPT was 435, and sometime later again 166 and 347. And he was carrying an ultrasound which just said hepatomegaly with fatty change, and this with which he came. So what were the investigations I did at my place? One is CBC, because he was presenting with pain abdomen and vomiting. So hemoglobin was okay, little low, 11.6. Platelets were okay, RFT was normal. And even at our center, the enzyme SGOT was 71 and SGPT was 219 with raised gamma GT and a normal albumin. So what did I do? I mean, I was just treating him. We did an endoscopy, nothing great, no significant abnormality, gave supportive treatment, identified constipation and treated him for his constipation. But my question to you now is, how do I address the abnormal liver enzymes? Though he came to me with pain abdomen and I identified constipation and he was just a bit overweight, not obese, how do I address this? So at my center, I decided that since there were enzymes for 2 months abnormal, I did the viral serology, which was normal. And since he was overweight, a thyroid and a lipid profile was done. Triglycerides borderline 160, but HbA1c was normal. Thyroid, TTG, because he was anemic, so that was also done as a screening. An autoimmune workup and a Wilson's workup was done, which was normal. Now, a fibroscan was done, which for those who are new to FibroScan, we look at the CAP, which gives us an indication of a fatty liver. And this was suggestive of a fatty liver. So I am going to take the further discussions with these questions. Is this NAFLD? NAFLD full form is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or fatty liver disease. What is NASH? NASH is non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. Is all fatty liver in children NAFLD? Is the term NAFLD right? What's the prevalence of NAFLD, fatty liver disease, in children? How does this occur? What are the other comorbidities I should look for? How does one diagnose NAFLD? Do all need biopsies to diagnose? Or are there special indications? And does my child need a liver biopsy? How do I treat if I diagnose it NAFLD? What should I tell the parents is the progression of pediatric NAFLD? It is beyond the scope of my talk to give all about the newer therapies, the genetics, etc. I totally appreciate that this Delhi group is a very academic group which loves very discussions need. But I think the first topic today, if I'm able to address these, it will be great, because most of the pediatricians will have these questions, and let's talk about this. And I deliberately did not include extra slides on the newer diagnostic techniques and therapies, etc. But I will definitely give you Bimalji.
I'm coming, Baba.
Great idea if you silent everybody and then you you unmute me. So first you silent everybody and then we will unmute. Bimalji, are you there? Okay. So yes. So in between when that you start hearing a background noise, that's the best way to go about. Silent everybody as the host, and then either it's Bimal the host or whoever else is the host that I would like to say to him the same. So what is NAFLD? Now, earlier diagnosis, I mean, there's so many definitions, but in general, the NASPGHAN doesn't use this many definition. They just say fatty liver, which is no evidence. Earlier, we used to say that more than 5% of hepatocytes with macrovesicular steatosis. But you will not find this definition in everything now. This terminology, more than 5% with macrovesicular steatosis, is more of a histological thing. So generally, we say evidence of fatty liver or fat in the liver.
You have muted, Neelam, yourself.
Yeah, I have to unmute myself. I've done that. Thank you. I didn't unmute. I think the host did that. Yeah, so there should be no evidence of any other disease, which is, say, viral hepatitis, autoimmune, inherited metabolic disorders. And I will give you a slide of this as I progress. Any infections, whatever CMV, BV, other viral infection, herpes, etc. Any drug-induced liver disease in a person without excessive alcohol intake. Now, you will all agree that this may not absolutely fit in pediatric. Therefore, what does the NASPGHAN say? That in most adults and in children, NAFLD is associated with central or generalized obesity. I would repeat, central or generalized obesity. So if you carefully look at your children, even if they're overweight, if they have a central obesity, then that gets very important. Insulin resistant, dyslipidemia, which is characterized by high triglyceride or HDL low levels. Now, the second question I asked you is, what is NASH? This is a purely histological diagnosis. Fatty liver disease, though I said it's 5% of the fat, we don't really need histology. We can do it from other techniques, radiological techniques, which we've talked about and will talk soon. But NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, as the word indicates, hepatitis is inflammation. So the left side picture shows you round cells, empty cells, which is the fat cells, which is steatosis. On the right side, you can see inflammation, the cells with increased inflammation. So this is called as NASH dip. So the third question I asked you was, is this terminology in children right or wrong? Because it says non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, but my children don't drink. So this is the next word that people have been talking. Should we change the definition? And the Asian group was the first, and in this, they talked, the adults group had met, and the consensus was probably to change the definition. Instead of NAFLD, can we make it M, metabolic associated, MEFLD. So this is what was redefining movement of fatty liver disease. That is what people talked about. And I would like to go a step further in children. Is all fatty liver in children NAFLD or metabolic FLD? Well, we know that our children drink more cokes rather than the other alcohol. And this is a very important slide for all residents and doctors. The fatty liver etiologies to be considered against a diagnosis of pediatric NAFLD or NASH. That means I have to exclude all this before I call it NAFLD. I would like to go slowly and read this because this is the most important slide when I am talking about a fatty liver in children. So, my dear colleagues, the fatty liver could be right what Dr. Datta taught us in our residency, which was malnutrition. Now, moving from malnutrition, let me take forward celiac disease, IBD, anorexia nervosa, obesity, severe malnutrition is what PM I talked about, what Datta used to teach us in Kalavati, diabetes, hypothalamic pituitary disorders, hypothyroidism, polycystic ovary syndrome, autoimmune hepatitis, viral hepatitis. So if you recollect, in my patient, I did do celiac, I did look ESR, anorexia was ruled out, malnutrition was ruled out, HbA1c I did thyroid, I did an ultrasound, it was a boy, and then viral markers I did. Come to the next group, genetic and metabolic. So oxidation defects, A beta, hypobeta lipoproteinemia, where there is dyslipidemia, cholesterol issues, A beta lipoproteinemia, cholesterol ester storage disease, citrin deficiency, cystic fibrosis, glycogen storage disease, fructose hereditary intolerance, mitochondrial paroxysmal defect, Schwarzman-Diamond syndrome with pancreatitis, Turner syndrome, urea cycle disorders, Wilson's disease. These are all to be also considered in these patients, and drugs like, besides ethanol, the pesticide, cocaine, drugs, solvents, retroviral drugs, aspirin, steroids, methotrexate, sodium valproate, tetracycline, etc. can also give rise to fatty liver disease. That was so colleagues, that means pediatric fatty liver disease. The title that you all gave me was fatty liver disease. But what was expected out of me is to talk about NAFLD. So I want to highlight that pediatric fatty liver disease all is not NAFLD. And the pathophysiological insights and approach to management is quite different in children. So though the adults are talking about NAFLD to MAFLD, this paper was written by the King's group, a pediatric hepatology group. They want to know whether we should even call it MAFLD or we should call it PEFLD, which is pediatric fatty liver disease. But the whole globally, this definition is not yet being accepted. The Americans now are thinking of calling it as NAFLD, as nutrition-associated fatty liver disease. So today, I talked to you three terms: non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, then I said metabolic associated fatty liver disease, then I'm saying PEFLD, pediatric fatty liver disease, then I'm saying some US wants to call NAS, nutrition-associated fatty liver disease. So this is how I answered the third question. Is the definition right? Now let us go to the fourth question. What is the prevalence of NAFLD? Well, in adults, it is as high as 25%, which could be as low as 14 to as high as 32% in some Middle Eastern, especially if you see patients who come from Middle East country, including Pakistan. I used to screen my donors. Every third donor used to be having fatty liver disease. So the pediatric non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is on an average 7 to 10%, and they say that these may not represent the true estimate because of the limited number of studies in children as compared to adults. So this, I've taken the slide from Nature paper, where you can see how there have been various studies. They've talked USA based on ultrasound. It was USA has been the best place. A lot of work has been done where they have done it based on enzymes, ALT, twice the limit of normal. 8% had abnormal enzymes, and 13% based on liver high. Brazil, same, based on abnormal enzymes, 13%. Mexico, 42%. And Australia, 10 to 13%. Iran, China, Japan. So the lowest is actually from Japan. Why? Because maybe the healthy eating habits, the Japan and Korea are the lowest, followed by China and UK. So what is in India? So in India, we find that this is emerging as a public health problem. The prevalence is very wide. If I took the papers right from 7 to 70%, the reason is the way they were carried about was basically by an ultrasound method. These two studies I decided to highlight. A Kashmir school children, more than 1,000, like 1,115 students in age group of 4 to 18 years, the prevalence on ultrasound was 7.4. And if I take an urban North Indian school from North India, Delhi, the 961 children 5 to 10 years was 22%. So you see, there is a very high prevalence of fatty liver disease. And I wanted to say that though globally, if the general, I said 7 to 10%. So let me look at obese children only. In obese children globally, it is 36%. More than 1/3. USA, 34% of obese have fatty liver. And I presented my data in the World Congress, which was in November last year, where we talked about enzyme based on the definition 2 times abnormal, and ours was 30. I'll take a quick snapshot of our experience from 2017 to 21. This, where we were looking at all children who came in the OPD, not inpatients, the OPD children who were presenting with any complaint. They were 214 obese. Out of total, I don't have the numbers, but this, we just saw, the study was retrospective. We analyzed all the obese children, 214. Out of them, virtually 70% obese that were there in the male. And in this, if I looked at the ALT, SGPT, more than 2 times normal, the cutoff that we had taken was probably 27 or 30. We took the same as American, though that is higher for them, 25 and 30. Based on that, the NAFLD was diagnosis, if I would say, was 30.8%. And 70% of this were males. And if I see, the less than 10 years was 36%, and more than 10 years was 64%. That means by the time you document abnormal enzymes, like more than 10 years, 64% had abnormal enzyme. How did I diagnose them? Basically, by looking at the ultrasound was the first. All patients had an ultrasound, and ultrasound was reporting as grade 1, grade 2 fatty liver. And we have 2 ultrasonologists who predominantly do for children. And so this was there. And then we did fibroscan during this time in patients who were obese with abnormal enzymes, and steatosis was found in 100%. So there were 6% who were missed on ultrasound, but they were all picked up on fibroscan. And only 20 people out of this 66, virtually 1/3 of them, we did a liver biopsy, which showed fibrosis in 15%. And of course, steatosis was 100%. That's how the diagnosis is made. And this is later on, I can talk what with the biopsy, but this is what was our study too, which was in something like the Western world, where in obesity, the incidence of fatty liver disease was very high. So let's take a minute to talk about what really happens. How does this fatty liver or NAFLD or MAFLD occur? Now, we're talking the primary hits the same 4 theories: insulin resistance, so the metabolic syndromes that we talk about, fat accumulation, metabolic syndrome, dyslipidemia, hypercalorific diet. All this give rise to increased free fatty acid. This free fatty acid get deposited in the liver. So that is your first hit. That means there is increased free fatty acid in the body, which gets deposited in the liver. Now, what happens? There are some environmental factors and genetic factors. I will not talk about the different genes because it doesn't, they are more for research academic purposes, but clinically you're not going to do genes and all in people. It was just to make us wiser when we do these studies. So these environmental factors, one of the good papers I love was from India, where Safdarjung paper, where they talked about how the low birth weight and the small for gestational age, they have a habit of storing fat in the liver. So they have the maternal obesity, gestational diabetes, low birth weight. These are also the environmental factors for the baby. And then subsequently later on, the environmental factor is the diet, the physical activity, and any talk is incomplete without talking about gut flora. There's a lot of now studies talking about gut flora. I had 6 to 7 slides of it when I presented my talk in the World Congress. I had 30 minutes to talk about this talk NAFLD in the World Congress. But for you all, I'm not going to talk about too much, except that yes, gut flora is responsible. Whether the egg or the chicken, is it because of obesity the gut flora changes? Gut flora changes, that is a lot of question, but yes, it has been seen an abnormal gut flora can increase the risk of fatty liver disease, because all obese people do not have fatty liver disease. So what is the secondary hit? The secondary hit, we had free fatty acid deposited in the liver. Now, why some of them progress to NASH? That is what I talked about, the environmental and the genetic. And the second, because of this, there is the pro-inflammatory cytokine, mitochondrial dysfunction, gut-liver axis, which is the microbiota, the oxidative stress, etc., that give rise to inflammation in the liver or the NASH. Once you have inflammation, you will have fibrosis. Once there is extensive fibrosis, you will have cirrhosis. If there is a cirrhosis, can give rise to cancer, and then eventually you may need a transplant. So this is the pathophysiology. Dr. Datta introduced by saying in the Western world, NAFLD is the commonest cause for liver transplant. In India, it used to be hepatitis B, alcohol, but in the last 5 years, things have changed. We do not see B and C even in adults as much as in the last 5 years. There's big change. NAFLD is becoming alcohol and NAFLD are the 2 leading causes in adults also. So now the next question I'm going to ask, which is what are the comorbidities to look for? So remember, colleagues, there is not a linear curve. That means if it took, I mentioned to you between 10 to 19, my patients had 15% had fibrosis. So does that mean if it took 18 years to get F2 fibrosis from their fibrosis to another severe F4, will it take another 19 years? No, it's not a linear curve. Initially, it could be, like progression, and then it could rapidly deteriorate. So this slide is just talking to you what are the comorbidities. Males are more predisposed. And even in my population, you saw that I spoke that 60-70% were males, like in the Western world, also males. And ethnicity, Asians and Hispanic, Caucasian are more than the Caucasian. And I talked about the metabolic syndrome, the polycystic ovary, the insulin-resistant type 2 diabetes, visceral obesity, dyslipidemia, impaired GGT, obstructive sleep apnea, and genetic. These are the genetic factors. Those who are interested may please read PNPLA, TMGC, all that stuff. And the dietary habits are very important. And we think that it is more in twins. So some hereditary factors also are responsible. Now, these are the incidents of hyperinsulinemia seen in 50% of PNAFLD, and 56% have the, even in the Kashmir study, had the PNAFLD. So high fructose beverages, fast foods, processed foods, fried foods. I heard the first talk was awesome of Anju and how she was talking about the Indian diet. And I would just like to say that she talked all about the healthy eating habits, and I wouldn't want to repeat because that topic was, the video was also circulated. So these are the bad things. Now we understand it's the sugars and the fructose which are more bad than the fat. Eating too rapidly, eating at night, eating too much, missing breakfast, inappropriate consumption, all this has been given as cause. So how do you diagnose NAFLD? Well, it is mostly asymptomatic. You can have some symptoms, which I'll tell you, or some family history, overweight, obese, central obesity, hepatosplenomegaly, acanthosis nigrans, which is not only seen in fair people, but you can easily see in Indians very easily. And the symptoms could be irritability, fatigue, headache, muscle cramps, depression, etc., pain abdomen, jaundice, vomiting, various features that patients had presented with and they got diagnosed. So the diagnostic non-clinical ways is either by an abnormal enzyme or radiology. Radiology, ultrasound as a screening agent, or a CT scan plain, or elastography. I mentioned to you in my study, I said fibroscan and I showed you a picture of 300 cat. So fibroscan. In smaller children, we can't do fibroscan, so we do ARFI. ARFI is based on an ultrasound. Obviously, most hospitals, most hospitals, including us, we do both fibroscan and ARFI. ARFI are predominantly done by the ultrasonologist, but fibroscan is done by the hepatologist, like we do ourselves, the fibroscan in our team. And the other is MRI and spectroscopy. So these are basically, I can't expect you to be ordering a CT and an MRI, etc. All that you can order, except when we are in, research modalities and etc. Otherwise, you will order an ultrasound or a fibroscan. And there are some biomarkers which didn't get popular, but LALs do some biomarkers. They're predominantly for adults, and liver biopsy is definitely the gold standard. So I repeat, liver biopsy is the gold standard. So I can't do liver biopsy for all. So how do I screen? So anybody, especially this group where you have overweight, even with either they are obese or they are overweight. In overweight, if there is a risk factor, central obesity, insulin resistant, pre-diabetes, dyslipidemia, sleep apnea, family history, then you should screen. My patient, if you remember, I didn't give you that patient had a central obesity. He had triglycerides slightly on the higher side, and I did not give you the family history. Is both the parents were obese. And so younger patients screening, what the recommendation is, the North American guidelines, younger patient also below 9 to 11 years, if they are obese or have a family history, you should screen. Or sibling and parent of NAFLD, if they have a risky. So these are the patients you should screen. How do I screen? I screen they suggest by an ALT. ALT, more than twice upper limit. 26 for boys and 22 for girls. This is what I was telling. that some studies say take 25 and 30, but this is what the cutoff. So you should take 2 times the upper limit for that. If the initial screening is not abnormal, then you can repeat it after 2 to 3 years. But if it comes borderline or something, then you might decide to screen them little earlier. So that answered the clinical questions. What my pediatricians will ask me, whom to screen, how frequently to screen. So I've answered you. Then you might ask, you said gold standard is liver biopsy, Neelam. Do I need to do liver biopsy and all? So I said to you in my data 66, I did 20 liver biopsy. It may not. So there are some recommendations by different groups. Let me rattle North American and the European. North Americans say that those who have increased risk of NASH or fibrosis, that means those whose liver enzyme are more than 80. PT more than 18, or there was splenomegaly, or AST to ALT ratio was more than 1. You should do a biopsy. And the ISPACAN says young, less than 10 years, or family history of NAFL, or presence of hepatosplenomegaly with some abnormal test and abnormal enzymes, persistent enzymes, and insulin-resistant children. So now coming back to my patient also, back to my patient's SGOT PT was in 300s. And nothing was there. So I had to do a liver biopsy. I fitted into all the criteria to diagnose. It's been more than 3-4 months. It's been on the higher side. So liver biopsy did show 80% macrovascular steatosis with whatever. Now, there are difference between a pediatric NAFLD and an adult. In pediatric NAFLD, you have inflammation around the portal vein, and in adults, you have more lobular. What is the significance? We don't know, but there are classifications. Those interested, I'll talk about after that. So this was NASH, and the fibrosis score was grade 1/4. So I would end up now in the last quarter to talk, how do I manage this child? What is the role of diet, weight loss, exercise, URSO, vitamin E, genetics, any treatment modalities, etc. Well, the proven therapy is the lifestyle modification. We have to work on diet and activity. These are so we have to avoid all the sugar sweetened beverages, fructose, etc. that I was talking, and increase the activity, limit the screen time. And you are August gathering. I don't need to keep talking about all about TV, activity, diet. All of us have heard those talks several times. So the established treatment of pediatric NAFLD to date is weight loss. And from adults, I can quote, repeat, more than 5% weight loss, just 5% weight loss will give rise to improvement in steatosis. 7% weight loss will result in improvement in NASH, inflammation, hepatitis. More than 10% can even reverse your fibrosis. I repeat, they can even reverse it. And the same has been done in 2 studies in children, Italian studies with 84, North American study where there was a drop in the enzymes and improvement in the steatohepatitis score like in adults. So encourage legumes, fruits, vegetable, nuts, seed, fish, virgin olive oil. Discourage refined foods, processed foods, maydas, etc., beverages, foods. Is the medications that have been used in trials, people have tried metformin, especially with insulin-resistant, vitamin E, etc. Vitamin E did show improvement in the histology. And then we have started talking about the omega-3 fatty acids, etc. They improve the metabolism by inhibiting the lipogenesis and stimulating the fatty acid oxygenation. There are a lot of trials called the tonic trial, the SYN-CH trial, etc. But I would like to say that there was not different than the placebo in terms of changing the score of the fat in the liver and the ALT improvement, etc. So still the guidelines say, whether it's the American ASLD guidelines or the North American pediatric guidelines, we say lifestyle modification, diet, physical activity, all this remains the thing, and no currently available medications. But ASLD does talk about that. Remember, metformin should not be prescribed as a NASH specific therapy. You need to refer to your endocrinologist to decide if they need for insulin resistance and other syndrome metabolic that they would want to give it for, not just for a simple abnormal enzymes. Vitamin E has been safe, but what are the long-term effects? We don't know. So couple of months people have been using, and this is the new slide for those who are youngsters and waiting to ask me questions, and I would just name this so that they feel happy about it. This is the new therapy. Medications with 3 lines we are working at. One is the metabolic effects, so omega-3, etc. Medication with anti-inflammatory effect, because if I reduce inflammation, the cytokine injury, etc., I might reduce the fibrosis. So elafibranor and obeticholic acid, these are the ones. Lot of research have been done and in adults, and the Regenerate phase 3 trial, this has talked about, so this got FDA approved. Obeticholic acid or FXR ligand, it improves hepatic fibrosis. So in the anti-fibrotic effect, these are the 2 drugs which are also being studied. The cilansitibib, Sensi-Ripiroc. I find it difficult to name them, but these are all a combination of inflammation and fibrosis. Leave it for the experts, the hepatologists to talk about. Last slide, which my parents would want to know. Madam, what is the progression? What should I reply? I should say, with a good weight loss, I can reverse it. So the multicentric study among the biopsy-proven PNAFL suggest advanced fibrosis and cirrhosis can occur in 13 years' time in 1/4 of them. I repeat, 13 years. This was a biopsy-proven study, very highly quoted study, where 1/4 of the patients ended up with advanced fibrosis and cirrhosis, and a retrospective long study with 20 years of follow-up of children with NAFLD had virtually 13.8 times higher risk of dying or requiring a liver transplant than general population. We don't know what is the risk of HCC still. Yes, few transplants have been reported in children less than 18 years with obesity and fatty liver disease, NAFLD. So my dear colleagues, thank you for your attention. And I would like to sum up with some highlights. Obesity is becoming an epidemic worldwide and a public health concern. And pediatric NAFLD or MAFLD is increasing. It's a major contributor to pediatric liver disease. Even at my center, I'm seeing a lot of pediatric NAFLD now, like in the Western world. Remember, PNAFLD is potentially reversible. It lies in the hand of pediatricians. If you pediatricians are wiser in making and educating your parents wiser, maybe you can progress them to get into an adult NAFLD, because earlier we didn't understand, but now we know that pediatric NAFLD, based on the 2 trials I talked about, the 20 years and that pediatric NAFLD is thought to be an early presentation of adult NAFLD. And the risk factors, you should be cautious in if you find your parents obese, and then in them do screen male central obesity, Asians like us, metabolic syndrome, which I've talked about, multifactorial disorder with complex interplay of genetic, epigenetic, environmental factors often coexist with components of metabolic syndrome. NAFLD to NASH is not a linear curve. It may go slowly and suddenly progress up. And the diagnosis and staging of disease remains complicated in clinical practice for you due to lack of accurate validation of screening tools and non-invasive methods. So we do still use the elastography scan techniques and very rarely biochemical markers, but there is a need for this, and we are talking and taking an expert opinion for abnormal enzyme is a wise decision rather than to label all children with abnormal enzyme and overweight and obese just as fatty liver disease, because how does it stop obese or a child or an overweight child not to have any other liver disease. So they could still have any other liver disease. And I gave you a slide which I rattled one at a time, the various etiologies, the drugs, the metabolic disorders, and the other causes which give rise to fatty liver in children. And the success of NAFLD is on weight alone therapy along with exercise. Just walking around at home is not important. As regular exercise activity is important. Window opportunity for many maybe during childhood and early adolescence, as the likelihood of overweight children, I repeat, the likelihood of overweight children becoming overweight adult is 80%. It's important for the way forward, I would say, that we restrict the ultra processed food talked about last week. There is a real opportunity to reverse the course of the disease in childhood, and pediatricians should take this seriously, because the brunt in adulthood with CLD, cirrhosis, HCC is there. We need a novel pharmacotherapy, especially in children. Right now, I've talked about those drugs, which I said, the obeticholic acid, that is a neo-targeted compound and antifibrotic, and the trials are underway in children too. Combination therapy is what we are looking both for steatosis, inflammation, and fibrosis. There you go with a healthy liver, what to eat and what not to eat.
Thank you very much, Neelam, for your par excellent deliberations, where you have highlighted all important aspects which are really important so far as a pediatrician is concerned. I'm sure there would be many questions and there may be comments, but before that, I would like to just highlight that in India also, there is an increase in obesity, especially the central obesity. The original hypothesis, what David Barker from Southampton University had said, that fetal origin of adult disease, you find that there is a low birth weight baby, especially if it is a growth restricted babies are there, then these babies, whenever they are being growing into children and then ultimately adolescent, they accumulate fat, specifically in the central fat as well as fat in the organ system, especially in the kidneys as well as in the liver. And that leads to metabolic syndrome, and which gives rise to insulin resistance, hyperlipidemia, as well as heart disease, coronary artery disease. And in addition, this is one of the most important disease, that is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, whatever you call, or a pediatric nutritional associated or pediatric liver non-alcoholic fatty disease, whatever terminology you use. This is becoming a very common thing, and I am sure this those subject study which they are continuing, if they do even the liver enzymes as well as even also the other tests, they will find a lot of their patients which might be having this problem of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Now, this is open for questions, and answers will be given by Neelam, although she has very elaborated all the questions which are really important for general pediatricians. Rest, of course, if there is a difficulty, she is always there to help, and send all difficult cases to her. She will solve them. Over to the organizer, Sandha and Bimal.
Thank you, ma'am. Such an excellent, illuminating talk. Really the need of the hour. That in the beginning of the new year. I can't be more grateful to you, ma'am, because at the drop of a hat, you just simply agreed to take the talk in such a short notice, especially with the Pedicon looming ahead in front of you. It's really nice of you, ma'am, to take.
You can always ask her, and she will talk on any aspect
Yeah,
of
and you will be
PDF.
surprised. My
PDF.
restrictions, that's why I give them to share
It was
the slide
overwhelming for me.
in the
Yes, yes.
afternoon, evening, because I wanted to make it very savvy for pediatricians. And
नहीं बहुत अच्छे बने, बहुत
This
अच्छे
study
बने।
Wow,
Really,
excellent,
yeah,
excellent talk.
Excellent to the point.
Correct.
Neelam,
And as I said, I'm the student of Dr. Datta, so his training is. so
I'm really very happy and really so happy today.
I'm
As
equally
you were,
happy.
so your student is, isn't it?
So I guess with that, we move, and next time we can take some other interesting topic. With all of you.
I'll take you that.
Anyone,
I'll take you up on that, ma'am.
कोई questions अगर है तो पूछ
any
लो.
questions?
Any questions? from
Anybody can
everybody?
raise hand. Anybody can just start, unmute and ask question. I can't see anybody asking.
Praveen. Hello, Dr. Praveen.
हाय
हाँ प्रवीण बताओ.
हाय सर, हाउ आर यू? आप
हाँ,
सबको नया साल बहुत बहुत मुबारक हो.
हाँ,
हाय मैम,
हाँ.
हाउ आर यू?
Happy
नीलम
New
मैम,
Year, Praveen.
हैप्पी न्यू ईयर टू यू मैम. मैम
बताओ.
एक बात बताएं, व्हाट वन कैन रियली डू during these pandemic times when kids are more often sitting in front of the computers or the mobiles or the television, are not allowed to go outside. They are making cakes, they are making all those stupid things and eating.
Very good. In fact, I did a video yesterday for somebody who was a freelancer from Mumbai. And when she took this video later on, she said to me that 10 years back, she met me with a child. And she asked me all these questions, and I did a video. I would love to share that video on your forum. I'll share it to you, and you should share it. So
Please.
basically, I feel that, with due apologies, that we, before we label the children as bad, the problem lies in us, in parenting. So I talked about, and I took this opportunity to say that it is the responsibility what parenting is about. So basically, there are 4 types of parenting, and in that, there is this authoritarian, where you discuss and you talk out. Authoritative, you just say what you want to say. Neglectful, the parent is busy in that, mother is busy. So these are the different types of parents and their children, and how it is. So this, what you're saying, it involves a lot of things during the COVID time, because the mental status of children is getting very upset, because especially teenagers, they want to be with their peers because they can't maybe open up with their parents, and so allowing them a little time to talk to their peers is very important too. They have to be role model. That is very important. Till today, Praveen, you need to see me that I ensure that my abdominal girth and my fitness stays. The reason is that you have to be a role model, that how the mother should ensure that this processed fat foods and all. I keep saying that, why do you even get cool drinks and all? Ki guest aaya to namkeen hai, guest aaya. So guest aaya to double tone doon ki cold coffee do. It's the concept I want to say. The guest will be more happy if you serve them salads or different foods or different innovative ideas. Google Auntie ki help se. So I think involving children is very important. I think being a role model with them about your eating habits and how you eat, making them wise. Like I still talk about, I keep calculating the calories in my mind. I enjoy it. I mean, everybody. So sometimes you want to know. So same thing you need to keep conveying to children, that what is good, what is bad. And I just stayed away from 5 things. So the process and the sweet and the mithas. Mitha is an addiction. In fact, mitha is so much of an addiction. Fried food utna bura nahi hai, jitna mithai buri hai. So just try to talk about those things, and they will understand. It's not going to be because during this COVID, I got children with so much of overweight, abnormal enzymes, psychological problem, and I'm so happy you raised it. So where I was talking about how the parents need to give not quantity but also quality time to their children, and using various board games and Monopoly and carom boards and Ludos and this. If the mother is interested in a Netflix show or a movie, then how will it the child be? So you yourself have to make a lot of sacrifices, and being a parent is quite difficult. I think that during that time, therefore a lot of people in the West take a lot of time to decide to have children. We are lucky that we have grandparents and we can plan out kids, but I think that between 7-8 years to 15-18 years, the parents, how they need to do parenting. I will share the two videos. One is of Outlook magazine, a video about parenting, and one this, how to keep your kids. And remember that the kids psychology also. So that is why don't be an authority, in the sense, don't just be a dictator. Understand them. They think that they are adults. You think they are child, but they think they are adults. So why are you always right? मैं ऐसे बोल दिया तो ऐसे करना है. That is wrong. You need to rationalize that. You know, just giving you an example, like if they say they want to go and meet a friend and you want them to clean the room. So you can say, I think you finished cleaning this room and then go and meet your friend. Something like make a deal with them. That's how I would say. And cooking, especially which you said baking, the several studies have shown that if you involve a child into buying healthy things and cooking, the child will eat that. Lot of studies.
सबसे बेस्ट है 1 घंटा म्यूजिक चला के तुम भी डांस करो और बच्चे लोगों को भी डांस कराओ,
Exercises is what. So
जैसे नीलम
encourage that.
करती है.
And I say 5 things on the fingers. One is the diet, one is the exercise, one is the sleep that you need to talk about, and mental health. So the mental health comes through the family and friends. That to keep you sane during this time.
Any other question? The basic thing is that this fatty disease, liver disease is
Somebody has
preventable.
asked, Poonamji has asked, are we seeing more pancreatitis too in obese children? Well, Poonamji, you're right. Pancreatitis is seen both in obese and non-obese children. In non-obese, basically, most of the time it may be mild and you might miss out a pain abdomen. But when it comes to obese, there is one of my first papers which had got an award in Commonwealth. This thing was where I talked about the pancreatitis, obesity, and there were 2 more papers from the best and one of us, that it carries a very high morbidity and mortality and severity. So you're absolutely right that when they come there, you are hospitalizing and they're sicker, and that's why you think that only, and the milder cases may be, you know, they're more severe. That's what we say. And then the second thing that they are more is because of the metabolic syndrome that they have, you know, they tend to have dyslipidemia and other causes which could be a factor for pancreatitis too.
Okay,
Ma'am, your patient had pain in the abdomen. What was the cause for that pain?
Well, as I said, in this patient, I showed you 6 to 7% of the patients of fatty liver present to you with pain abdomen in most series. So actually, you know, like the liver is enlarged and it's stretching. If you talk to adults, they feel that ek halka sa pain hai, those who have hepatomegaly. So they talk about it. And in this patient, the vomiting was occasional, and a lot of patients of obese do have reflux also because of central obesity and the eating habits and all. So you just need to talk about the lifestyle modification to them. And in association, this child had a bit of constipation, which I told, maybe that could have been. So I can't tell you whether it was related to hepatomegaly or constipation, but he just improved. And the main focus I wanted to take you was that though he came for something and my focus was beyond that.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no questions, I would like to thank Neelam, and I would like to thank both Sandhya and Bimal for inviting both of us for this particular session. Good night.
सर गाना
Thank you,
गाना
sir.
कौन गा रहा है सर? गाना आप तो गा
अच्छा गाना
मैडम,
तो
मैडम।
बत्रा जी
आप गा
गाएंगे।
दीजिए सर, आज एक अच्छा सा गाना आप आ गए।
गाना तो नहीं गा सकता हूँ भैया, संध्या नहीं तो ये बजाएगी, अपना ये सितार लेके आएगी। हाँ?
So,
सर
one of
एक
your
अच्छा सा जोक सुना दीजिए, वो
अच्छा
उसमें
चलो
आपको
एक जोक सुना देता हूँ, चलो ठीक है। There was a Bengali couple, newly married couple in Calcutta. So the girl became pregnant and almost about to delivery का कुछ दिन ही बाकी था. He got transferred to Delhi. तो आते टाइम अपना मायके में छोड़ के जब आ रहा था कि बोल रहा था कि पापा मेरा जब बेटा होएगा तब आप बेटा होएगा बोलना नहीं, टेलीग्राम जब करोगे या बोलोगे तो उसको बोल देना कि घड़ी आया। तो वो चला गया है, क्योंकि क्यों भैया बेटा क्यों नहीं बोलूं? बोलते वो दिल्ली में अगर बेटा एक बार सुन लिया तो सब लोग इतना ज्यादा ये करेंगे कि मेरा पास इतना पैसा नहीं है कि मैं बड़ा पार्टी दे पाऊंगा। बोलते ठीक है बेटे कर देंगे जैसे तुम चाहते हो। तो कुछ दिन बाद बच्चा पैदा हुआ है, बट अल्टीमेटली वो बेटी हो गया है। तो हाउ ही शुड, मतलब ससुर बड़ा दुविधा में पड़ गया कि कैसे उनको ये करे, अपना सन इन लोग को इन्फॉर्म करे कि बेटा नहीं हुआ है बेटी हुआ है। तो दैट कोड लैंग्वेज घड़ी से ही करना है। तो बोलता है बेटे घड़ी आया लेकिन पेंडुलम का बिना है। चलो थैंक यू।
wonderful sir, wonderful.
thank you so much. Wonderful joke.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, good
Good
night.
night.
Good
Mr. Datta, ma'am, let me first thank
Good
you
night,
before
good
you
night, good
leave.
night.
Both you and Dr. Datta.
Good night, Sandhya.
Both
Please
of you agree to
put
take
a
our
view, gallery
talk.
view. Can anybody take a picture in the gallery view, and everybody can show their faces? Beautiful Sangeeta, Vicky Arora, Poonam, Yogesh, Surinder, Vicky Jain, IPS coach. Can you all just come for a minute? And then whoever is the host can take a picture. Thank you, Arora ji, Poonam ji, Yogesh ji, Sadhya ji, Kocher ji. Ah, there you go. John.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for all the lovely lecture you took for us, illuminating. And you're an embodiment of excellence, humility, beauty, and brains.
Thank you.
And so
Yes.
you two, at such a short notice, agreed to take be the chairperson for this session. We're ever grateful to both of you, sir.
Oh,
Thank
yes.
you, thank you, thank
I have
you.
to thank the SB group also to nominate me for being the president this year. Rather unexpected, overwhelming for me.
Congratulations, ma'am. Congratulations and all the best.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone, sir.
Sandhya and Bimal will do a very good job.
They
I
will, they
hope-
will.
All,
No
all
I
the
hope
best.
we live up to your expectations, sir.
Yes,
And
yes, you will do very well.
just for everybody to know that Sitaram Bhartiya Hospital has agreed to do all the Zoom meetings for us this whole year. So we have to thank Dr. Sankalp and Dr. Poonam also to help me out in this organization. And all the
Excellent.
CME organizers have been helping me out, to manage these sessions because, we are rather new to this whole thing. We're going
Excellent,
to take some time
excellent.
to sort of, get our bearings right. So thank you, the audience, for being so supportive and so attending. And we hope the show goes on next Thursday again. This is on genetics.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.
Namaste.
Okay, okay, Bimal.
Bye.
With Bimal and Sandhya, bye.
Bye,
Thank
bye.
you.
Thank you.
Enjoyed.
Thank you.
Enjoyed.
So shall I end the talk now?
Yes, yes.
करना पड़ेगा.
End over.